They sent an Apache girl to the cowboy as a joke. Months later, she wore his last name. The town of Red Rock had always been a quiet place. Dust hung in the air, stirred by the wind or by the hooves of horses moving along the main street. Most of the people who lived there were cowboys, ranchers, or shopkeepers who had learned to live with the hard sun and long, empty stretches of land. Life in Red Rock was simple, predictable, and, some might say, even a little boring. That is, until the day Lily Redfeather arrived. No one in Red Rock knew exactly what to expect. Rumors had already spread by word of mouth that someone unusual was coming, a young Apache woman, sent to the town as part of a joke. The local cowboys had laughed and joked endlessly about it. "An Apache girl in Red Rock? What's she going to do, dance us out of our boots?" one of the men had said, slapping his knee in amusement. Others had laughed along, imagining the stories they would tell when she arrived. It was meant to be funny. No one expected that the joke might turn out to be something much bigger than anyone could imagine. Lily stepped into the town calmly, her eyes steady and thoughtful. She did not seem nervous or uncertain, even though she could sense all the whispers and curious glances. Her long black hair was tied neatly at the back, and her clothing was simple but practical. She walked with a quiet confidence that made people take notice immediately. This was not the kind of woman who would be easily intimidated, nor was she the kind who would play along with the jokes that had brought her here. The first person to approach her was James McAllister. He was tall and strong, with a quiet presence that made people respect him without needing to say much. He had grown up in the frontier, learning early how to care for horses, ride across rough land, and survive when the world seemed against him. James had heard the rumors too, and when he saw Lily for the first time, he felt a mixture of amusement and curiosity. She was certainly not what he had expected. There was no fear in her eyes, only determination and a sharp intelligence that seemed to see everything around her. "Are you really here for us, or is this just a joke?" James asked, keeping his voice steady, though he was genuinely curious. Lily smiled slightly, but it was not a smile of mockery or fear. "I am here," she said simply. "And I am not here to play games." The cowboys who had gathered to watch the arrival murmured among themselves. They were expecting someone to be scared, flustered, or at least awkward. They certainly were not expecting someone to meet their teasing with calm confidence. Lily's presence made them uneasy in a way they had not anticipated. From the very beginning, it became clear that Lily was not someone to underestimate. She could handle horses with skill, moving them as if she had been riding all her life, which, in fact, she had. She knew how to read the land, find water, and navigate even the trickiest terrain. The cowboys, who had thought they were in control of this joke, soon realized that she was more capable than anyone had guessed. James began to watch her closely. He noticed how she approached every task with care and precision. When a young boy dropped a bucket of water, Lily didn't scold him or show frustration. Instead, she helped him refill it, showing patience and kindness. James found himself quietly impressed. She was not just brave. She had a quiet wisdom that made people respect her without her needing to demand it. Over the next few days, the town began to adjust to her presence. Some of the cowboys continued their teasing, but it gradually lost its bite. Lily was clever enough to turn their jokes back on them, not in a cruel way, but in a way that made them laugh at themselves rather than at her. It was clear to everyone that this young Apache woman had a mind as sharp as her spirit, and she was not someone to be taken lightly. Despite the initial tension, Lily did not isolate herself. She spoke to the shopkeepers, helped with chores, and even assisted in guiding travelers who had lost their way. People began to realize that her arrival, while unexpected, brought a new energy to the town. She moved through Red Rock with quiet grace, earning small but meaningful respect from the townspeople. James, in particular, found himself observing her more often than he realized. There was something about the way she carried herself that drew his attention. It was not just her skill or her confidence, but also the way she treated others, with fairness, patience, and a quiet strength. He began to understand that the joke that had brought her here was nothing more than a small seed in a much larger story. One afternoon, as the sun began to set behind the distant hills, Lily and James found themselves alone for a moment. The air was warm and the sounds of the town had softened into the evening. James asked her about her journey, about how she had come to be in Red Rock. Lily spoke of her family, her Apache heritage, and the challenges she had faced growing up. She spoke with honesty and clarity, never exaggerating, never pleading. James listened intently, realizing that the woman before him had experienced more than most people in Red Rock could imagine. It became clear that Lily's arrival was not just a momentary distraction or a joke to entertain the townspeople. It was the beginning of something far more meaningful. The cowboys who had expected to laugh at her soon found themselves silently observing, sometimes admiring, sometimes quietly reconsidering their own assumptions. Lily's presence challenged them, made them question their own ideas about strength, courage, and respect. By the end of her first week in Red Rock, it was impossible to view her as the subject of a joke. She had already made her mark on the town, not through loud words or grand gestures, but through steady action, intelligence, and a fearless spirit. Even those who had doubted her found themselves drawn to her presence. Lily had arrived as a prank, but she was quickly becoming a vital part of the town's daily life. James, in particular, felt a mixture of admiration and curiosity. He respected her courage and skill, but there was also a growing sense that she was different from anyone he had ever met. The quiet moments they shared, whether helping a neighbor or observing the sunset, began to build a connection that neither of them fully understood yet. As the days turned into weeks, it became clear to everyone that Lily Redfeather was not someone to be underestimated. She had arrived as part of a joke, sent by friends to surprise the cowboys, but she had proven herself to be far more than anyone could have anticipated. The town of Red Rock, once ready to laugh at her, began to watch with quiet awe, realizing that their small frontier town had been visited by someone extraordinary. And so, as the first part of this story comes to a close, Lily stood on the edge of town one evening, looking out at the horizon. The sun dipped behind the hills, casting golden light across the dusty streets. She knew that her presence in Red Rock was only the beginning, and though the journey ahead would not be easy, she was ready. The joke that had brought her here had unexpectedly opened a door, and Lily was about to walk through it with courage, strength, and a sense of purpose that would change the town and her own life forever. The first week in Red Rock, Lily Redfeather had already begun to make her presence felt. The town that had expected her to be a source of amusement was slowly learning to respect her. But it was not only the townspeople who were noticing her. James McAllister, the quiet cowboy who had first approached her with curiosity, found himself observing her more closely with each passing day. Lily's days were filled with work and action. She woke early every morning, before the sun had fully risen, to tend to the horses. She brushed them, fed them, and checked their saddles with care. She was skilled and efficient, moving as if she had always been part of this life, and her calm confidence began to inspire those around her. James often watched her silently, admiring the way she handled the animals, her movements precise and deliberate, yet gentle. There was a strength in her that he had rarely seen in anyone, and he felt drawn to it, though he did not yet understand why. The cowboys, initially laughing at her arrival, started to notice that Lily was different. She was not just brave, she was clever, capable, and unafraid of hard work. When a group of men struggled to herd a few wild horses into the pen, Lily stepped in without hesitation. Her voice was firm but kind as she guided the animals, and her hands were steady. Within moments, the task that had seemed almost impossible for the cowboys was completed smoothly. Even the most skeptical among them had to admit that she had skill beyond what they had expected. James, however, saw more than just her skill with animals. He noticed how she treated people, especially those who were weaker or less experienced. One afternoon, a young boy named Tommy, who often ran errands for the general store, tripped and spilled a basket of apples. The other cowboys laughed at him, but Lily stepped forward calmly. She knelt down and helped him gather the fallen apples. She spoke to him gently, encouraging him not to worry and to be careful next time. James watched silently, feeling a growing respect for her kindness and wisdom. It was during the cattle drive a week later that their bond began to deepen in a way that neither of them had expected. The ranchers needed to move a herd across the plains to reach a distant town. Lily insisted on joining despite the dangers of the journey. James was surprised but did not argue. He had learned by now that Lily was not someone who backed down from a challenge, and he had come to trust her judgment. The first day of the drive was long and exhausting. The sun blazed overhead, and the dust kicked up by the moving cattle made it hard to see. The horses were restless, and the men were tired. Lily rode alongside James, keeping pace with the herd and offering advice on how to guide the stubborn animals. Her voice was calm and steady, even when the situation became difficult. James realized that her presence made the journey easier for everyone, not because she was commanding them, but because she led by example. By the second day, they encountered a small group of outlaws attempting to steal cattle from the herd. The cowboys were tense, unsure how to respond. Lily, however, did not panic. She moved quickly, helping to direct the horses and position the men in a way that protected the herd. Her quick thinking and courage prevented the outlaws from taking any cattle. The cowboys, who had once doubted her abilities, now looked at her with awe. James, in particular, felt a mixture of relief and admiration. He had seen courage before, but Lily's courage was combined with intelligence and foresight. During the evenings around the campfire, Lily and James began to talk more. They shared stories of their lives, their struggles, and their dreams. Lily spoke of her Apache heritage, the lessons she had learned from her family, and the challenges she had faced growing up. James shared his own experiences, talking about the loneliness of life on the frontier and the responsibilities he had carried since he was young. They found comfort in each other's company, discovering that they understood one another in ways that few others could. It was not just the shared stories that brought them closer, but also the quiet moments of understanding. One night, as the fire crackled and the stars lit up the sky, Lily noticed that James was lost in thought. "You think too much," she said softly, not as a criticism, but as an observation. He looked at her, surprised by her insight. "Maybe," he admitted, "but sometimes thinking helps me see what's coming." Lily smiled. "Sometimes you need to trust your heart, not just your mind," she replied. James found himself thinking about her words long after the fire had burned down. The townspeople of Red Rock began to notice the change as well. The cowboys who had once teased Lily were now more cautious in their jokes, realizing that she was not someone who could be easily mocked. Some of the older townsfolk began to admire her resilience and resourcefulness. They saw that the young woman who had arrived as part of a joke had become an important presence in their community. Even those who had been skeptical could not deny that Lily Redfeather had made a difference. One morning, as they prepared for another day of the cattle drive, A sudden storm rolled in from the hills. The wind howled, and rain began to fall in heavy sheets. The cowboys were nervous, unsure how to protect the herd from the storm. Lily, however, remained calm. She guided the animals to a sheltered area and helped the men secure the camp. James watched her work, realizing that her courage and intelligence were not limited to moments of excitement or danger. They were part of who she was. The storm passed and the cattle drive continued, but the experience left a lasting impression on James and the others. They had seen Lily face challenges with strength, skill, and grace. The initial joke that had brought her to Red Rock now seemed almost irrelevant. Lily had proven herself, not through words or boasting, but through consistent action and unwavering courage. As the journey continued, James found himself thinking about her constantly. He admired her bravery, her intelligence, and her kindness. He began to realize that his feelings for her were growing beyond simple respect. There was a connection forming between them, quiet and subtle, but undeniable. Lily, too, seemed to enjoy his company, often seeking him out to share a story or a quiet moment by the fire. By the time they returned to Red Rock, the townspeople were talking about the young Apache woman in a new light. She was no longer a joke or a curiosity. She was someone they could respect, someone who had proven herself through action, courage, and character. James felt a sense of pride and admiration for her, but also a growing sense of something deeper, a bond that had begun to form through shared experiences, trust, and mutual respect. Even in the quiet moments, Lily continued to surprise him. She had a way of seeing the world that was both simple and profound. She noticed small details, understood people's intentions, and acted with thoughtfulness and wisdom. James realized that he had underestimated her before, and now he was grateful for every lesson she had unknowingly taught him. As the sun set over Red Rock, casting a warm golden glow over the town, James and Lily stood together near the corral. The cattle were settled, the horses fed, and the town seemed to breathe a little easier. They shared a quiet moment, acknowledging, without words, the respect and understanding that had grown between them. The playful teasing of the past seemed distant now, replaced by something much more meaningful. Lily Redfeather had arrived as part of a joke, a prank meant to entertain or confuse the cowboys of Red Rock. But over the weeks that followed, she had shown them that courage, intelligence, and kindness could not be measured by jokes or assumptions. She had transformed the town's expectations, and in doing so, she had begun to transform James's world. By the end of that second part of her story, it was clear that the journey ahead would be challenging, but it would also be filled with growth, understanding, and connection. The bond between Lily and James was quietly forming, strengthened by shared experience, mutual respect, and a growing admiration for one another. The town of Red Rock had witnessed something extraordinary. A young woman had arrived as a joke, but she was becoming an integral part of the life and heart of the community, and perhaps the heart of one cowboy in particular. And so, as the night settled over the town and the stars began to shine, Lily and James prepared for the days ahead. They did not yet know what challenges awaited them, but they had learned that together they could face almost anything. The joke that had brought her here was no longer important. What mattered was courage, respect, and the quiet bond that was forming between two people who had learned to see each other for who they truly were. After the long cattle drive, life in Red Rock began to settle into a rhythm, but nothing was quite the same as before. The town had started to see Lily Redfeather not as a joke or an outsider, but as someone capable, kind, and brave. Yet even as the townspeople adjusted to her presence, the bond between Lily and James continued to grow, quietly and steadily. It was in these ordinary days, filled with small tasks and shared moments, that their connection deepened in ways neither of them had expected. Each morning, Lily rose early, as she always had, to care for the horses and prepare the stables. James often found himself watching her from the doorway of the barn, admiring the way she moved with purpose and confidence. There was a calmness in her, a sense that she belonged in this world while still carrying the strength of her own heritage. James had met many people in his life, but Lily's presence felt different. She demanded no attention, yet when she was around, people noticed. Her quiet strength spoke louder than any words could. The townspeople began to see more of Lily's gentle nature as well. She would help anyone in need, without expecting praise. One afternoon, she noticed an elderly man struggling to carry a heavy sack of grain to his shop. Without hesitation, she stepped forward and lifted the sack with ease. The man looked at her in surprise. "Thank you, Miss Redfeather," he said, grateful but slightly embarrassed. Lily only smiled. "It's no trouble. I'm happy to help," she replied. James, who had been passing by, stopped and watched, feeling admiration grow even more. He realized that her courage was matched by a remarkable kindness. James and Lily began spending more time together, often without realizing it. They would work side by side in the stables, mend fences, or guide horses, talking quietly as they went. In these moments, they learned about each other in ways the rest of the town could not see. Lily shared stories of her childhood, the lessons she had learned from her family, and the values that had shaped her. James, in turn, spoke about his life on the frontier, the hardships he had endured, and the loneliness he often felt. Their conversations were simple but meaningful, each word building trust and understanding. It was during one of these quiet afternoons that Lily noticed something unusual in James. He often seemed distant, thoughtful, as if carrying a weight that few could see.
"You worry too much,"
she said gently one day, handing him a brush to clean a stubborn horse.
James paused, surprised by her observation.
"I suppose I do," he admitted. "Life here isn't always easy." Lily nodded. "No, it isn't, but sometimes we focus too much on what might happen instead of what we can do right now." Her words were simple, yet they carried wisdom that made James pause and reflect. He realized that Lily had a way of seeing the world clearly, without judgment, without fear. As the days passed, their connection became stronger. They began to rely on each other in small ways that grew over time. When James had to take care of the ranch, Lily would step in to manage the stables. When Lily needed advice on navigating town matters, James was there to support her. This mutual reliance was not about weakness or dependence. It was about partnership, trust, and respect. The townspeople started to notice how naturally they worked together, how their actions complemented one another, and whispers of admiration began to spread. One evening, as the sun dipped below the hills, James and Lily rode together along a quiet trail outside of town. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of wild grass and the faint smoke of distant fires. They rode side by side, not speaking at first, simply enjoying the calm of the evening. Finally, Lily broke the silence. "Do you ever feel like life is leading us somewhere, even if we don't know where?" she asked. James considered her words. "I think sometimes it does, but the journey is what matters, not just the destination." Lily nodded thoughtfully, her eyes reflecting the golden light of the setting sun.
"Yes, and it's easier when you have someone to share it with," she added softly.
James felt his heart stir at her words, though he said nothing, letting the moment speak for itself. Some townsfolk were still wary of Lily, unsure how to react to someone who had arrived under unusual circumstances and yet quickly proved herself capable. There were moments of tension, subtle glances, or whispered remarks. But Lily handled them with patience and grace. She did not retaliate or demand respect. Instead, she continued to show through her actions that she was deserving of it. Over time, even the most skeptical began to acknowledge her strength, courage, and character. James, who had known prejudice and judgment in his own life, admired the way Lily faced it. He began to see her not only as brave and capable, but as someone who could influence the hearts and minds of others through integrity and patience. Together, they started to earn a quiet respect from the town, a respect built not on fear or authority, but on consistency, kindness, and courage. During these weeks, small but meaningful moments continued to shape their bond. One day, while mending a fence, a sudden gust of wind knocked Lily's hat to the ground. James picked it up and handed it to her, their hands brushing for a brief moment. It was a simple gesture, but it carried an unspoken connection that both felt. Another afternoon, while helping a group of children learn to ride, James watched Lily patiently guide them, encouraging them gently when they struggled. He realized that her strength was not just physical. It was emotional, spiritual, and deeply human. As their connection deepened, so too did their understanding of each other's pasts and dreams. Lily spoke of her family, the traditions she cherished, and the lessons she had learned about resilience and respect. James shared his hopes for the future, his desire for a life that was meaningful and full of purpose, even if it was challenging. In each other, they found someone who understood the value of hard work, honesty, and courage. They found someone who could stand beside them, not just in moments of safety, but in moments of challenge as well. One afternoon, a traveling merchant arrived in Red Rock bringing news from towns beyond the hills. He spoke of dangers on the roads, of thieves and unpredictable weather. The cowboys grew tense, unsure how to protect their livestock and themselves. Lily, calm as ever, suggested practical solutions. She helped plan routes that were safer and advised on precautions to take. James worked alongside her, impressed not only by her knowledge, but by her ability to remain composed under pressure. Their teamwork was seamless, a silent understanding that had grown from weeks of shared experience. As the town settled once more, Lily and James found time to walk together through the outskirts, sharing quiet conversation and laughter. They spoke of ordinary things, food, weather, and the rhythms of daily life. But in those simple words, a deeper connection formed. They learned to read each other's expressions, understand unspoken thoughts, and offer comfort without needing to speak. Their friendship was evolving, strong and steady, yet it carried the quiet promise of something more. Evenings often found them near the corral, watching the sun sink behind the hills. The town, once full of whispers and jokes, was beginning to accept Lily fully. The cowboys who had teased her now approached her with respect, some even seeking her advice. James observed these changes, feeling a quiet satisfaction. He admired not just Lily's courage and skill, but her ability to change the hearts of those around her without demanding it. One night, as a cool breeze swept through the town, James and Lily sat near the campfire outside the stable. The flames flickered, casting dancing shadows across their faces. Lily spoke softly of her hopes and dreams, of the life she wanted to build, and of the values she held dear. James listened, feeling a deep connection to her words. He realized that she had become more than a companion or a friend. She had become someone he could trust with his thoughts, his fears, and his heart. The bond between them grew, not through grand gestures or dramatic moments, but through small acts of courage, patience, and understanding. Each day they spent together strengthened their connection, creating a foundation built on respect, shared experience, and genuine care. The town of Red Rock, once ready to laugh at her, had come to admire and respect her, seeing in her the qualities that made her extraordinary. By the end of these months, it was clear to both James and Lily that their relationship had evolved into something meaningful. They had faced challenges together, celebrated small victories, and learned to trust each other in ways that few people ever could. The playful joke that had brought Lily to Red Rock now seemed almost irrelevant. What mattered was the bond they had formed, strong, quiet, and unshakable. And so, as the evening sky darkened and the stars began to shine, Lily and James stood together near the corral, feeling the quiet satisfaction of a day well spent. The town slept peacefully, unaware of the depth of the connection forming between two extraordinary people. The prank that had brought her here was long forgotten. In its place was a growing partnership, one built on courage, respect, and a quiet love that neither of them yet fully understood, but both felt deeply. Life in Red Rock had settled into a rhythm, but peace was fragile. Even as the townspeople grew to respect Lily Redfeather, there were still whispers, quiet judgments, and those who could not accept her presence fully. Some of the cowboys who had once laughed at her arrival were beginning to admire her, but a few still clung to old prejudices. Among them was a young man named Cole, a cowboy who had always considered himself the center of attention in Red Rock. When he noticed James and Lily growing closer, his amusement turned into resentment. He could not understand why the townspeople had begun to admire her so openly, and he felt a prick of jealousy toward James, whose quiet strength had always been respected. The first real challenge came one morning when a group of traders passed through town, bringing news of bandits operating on nearby trails. While most of the townspeople paid little attention, Lily and James took the warning seriously. They knew that travel and work on the plains were dangerous, and preparation could mean the difference between safety and disaster. James immediately began organizing a plan for the ranch and the surrounding areas, while Lily offered suggestions to make it more effective. Together, they worked to secure livestock, reinforce fences, and prepare for any threats that might come their way. Despite their careful planning, tension in the town began to rise. Cole, seeing Lily's growing influence, decided to test her, hoping to humiliate her in front of the others. He approached her one afternoon as she was guiding a young horse into the corral. "You think you belong here just because James likes you?" he sneered, trying to provoke a reaction. Lily looked at him calmly, unafraid. "I belong here because I work, because I care for the town, and because I respect the people in it," she replied quietly but firmly. Her calm confidence caught Cole off guard, and the other cowboys who had gathered to watch began to shift uncomfortably. James arrived just as the confrontation seemed ready to escalate. He placed a hand on Lily's shoulder, a silent gesture of support. "Let's not waste our time," he said quietly, addressing Cole. "If you have a problem, speak to me, not her." Cole hesitated, then backed down, frustrated but unable to challenge James openly. Lily smiled faintly at James, grateful for his protection but proud of her own ability to handle the situation. That moment marked a turning point, not just in her relationship with James, but in the town's understanding of her strength. The next challenge came when a severe storm hit Red Rock unexpectedly. Heavy rain and strong winds battered the town, threatening livestock and property. The cowboys struggled to protect the animals, but the sheer force of the storm made it nearly impossible. Lily, however, remained calm. She organized the effort, directing the townspeople to move horses into the stables, secure wagons, and reinforce fences. Her clear thinking and decisive actions ensured that no animals were lost and damage was minimized. James worked alongside her, impressed once again by her courage and skill. He began to realize that her bravery was not just physical, it was a quiet resilience that inspired those around her. Through these challenges, the bond between Lily and James grew stronger. They began to understand each other on a deeper level, learning to anticipate one another's thoughts and actions. During the storm, a brief moment of silence found them standing together, watching the rain pour down. James turned to her, admiration in his eyes. "You always seem to know what to do," he said. Lily shook her head gently. "I don't always know," she replied, "but I try to see what is needed and act. That is all any of us can do." Her humility and determination only deepened James's respect for her. Even as they faced these external challenges, their personal connection deepened in quiet ways. They began sharing small routines, like morning walks to check on the stables, or evenings spent tending to minor repairs around town. These moments were not dramatic or extraordinary, yet they built trust and intimacy that neither had experienced before. James found comfort in Lily's presence, a sense of stability that had been missing from his life. Lily, in turn, valued James's calm strength and steady support. Together, they were learning how to face challenges as a team. But not all challenges were external. Some came from within the town itself, as prejudice and old habits of judgment persisted. A few of the older townsfolk whispered about Lily's Apache heritage, questioning whether she truly belonged in their community. Lily heard these remarks but did not respond with anger. Instead, she continued to demonstrate her abilities, her courage, and her kindness. Over time, even those who had been skeptical began to recognize the truth. They could not deny the value she brought to Red Rock. James became more protective of Lily during these times, not because she was weak, but because he admired her and wanted to ensure she was treated with the respect she deserved. He stood beside her during confrontations, but he also allowed her to take the lead when her judgment and skills were needed. Their partnership was built on mutual respect, not dominance. This balance became a model for others in the town, showing that true strength comes from collaboration, understanding, and trust. As the weeks went on, the town experienced smaller challenges as well: lost cattle, minor injuries, and conflicts among townspeople. Each time, Lily proved herself to be calm, thoughtful, and capable. She mediated disputes, helped with repairs, and ensured that life in Red Rock continued smoothly. James observed her closely, learning from her approach to problem-solving. He began to understand that her strength was not just in action, but in perception, patience, and empathy. One particularly tense day, a young boy got lost while exploring the outskirts of the town. Panic spread among the townsfolk, and search parties were organized. Lily immediately joined the effort, moving swiftly and efficiently through the hills. Her knowledge of the land and ability to track signs quickly led the group to the boy, who was frightened but unharmed. The townspeople were grateful, and James felt a deep sense of pride. Lily had not only saved the boy but had done so with grace and composure, reinforcing the trust and respect she had earned. Even in moments of success, Lily and James found time to share quiet reflections. Sitting near the river one evening, watching the sun set in shades of orange and pink, James spoke softly. "I've seen a lot of people in my life," he said, "but few like you. You have a way of making everyone around you better." Lily looked at him, her eyes thoughtful. "I just do what I can," she replied. "But it helps to have someone who believes in you too." James nodded, realizing that their partnership was as much about support as it was about courage. Through all these challenges, Lily and James's connection grew stronger. They were no longer simply friends or allies. They were partners in every sense. They learned to anticipate one another's needs, support each other in moments of difficulty, and celebrate successes together. Their bond became a source of stability and strength, not just for themselves, but for the entire town. By the end of this part of their story, it was clear that Lily had transformed the town of Red Rock in more ways than one. She had arrived as a joke, meant to entertain or confuse the cowboys, but she had proven herself in every challenge that came her way. Her courage, intelligence, and kindness had not only earned James's admiration, but had also inspired the entire town to see her for who she truly was. James, for his part, had come to understand that Lily was not just a remarkable woman. She was someone he could rely on, trust, and perhaps even love. Their connection had been tested by external challenges, and they had emerged stronger for it. The town, too, had grown, learning lessons about courage, respect, and the value of seeing people for who they truly are, not what others expect them to be. As the stars appeared over Red Rock, twinkling like tiny fires in the night sky, James and Lily stood together near the stables. They did not need words to express what they felt. Their shared experiences, challenges faced, and moments of trust and understanding had built a bond that was strong, quiet, and enduring. The challenges they had faced had not weakened them. They had strengthened their connection and prepared them for whatever the future might hold. In the quiet of the night, with the town resting peacefully around them, Lily and James knew that their journey was far from over. More challenges would come, both from the world beyond Red Rock and from the hearts of those around them. But they also knew that together they could face anything. The playful joke that had brought Lily to the town had long faded into the past. In its place was courage, respect, partnership, and the quiet beginnings of love that neither of them could deny. As the night carried on and the winds whispered through the hills, Lily and James prepared for whatever the next day would bring, confident that together they could meet every challenge, every difficulty, and every unexpected turn with strength, patience, and a growing bond that would not be broken. Months had passed since Lily Redfeather first arrived in Red Rock, sent as a prank, a joke meant to entertain the cowboys. Yet what had begun as a joke had grown into something extraordinary. Lily had proven herself through courage, intelligence, and kindness, earning the respect of the entire town. She had faced challenges, stood strong against prejudice, and shown remarkable skill in caring for the ranch, the animals, and the people around her. And in the process, she had formed a bond with James McAllister that went far beyond friendship. James often found himself watching Lily in quiet moments, admiring the way she moved, how she handled each challenge, and how she cared for others. He had always been a man of few words, relying on action rather than speech to express himself. But with Lily, he found himself thinking constantly, noticing little details about her, appreciating her intelligence, her humor, and her calm strength. He realized that his feelings for her had grown into something deeper, a connection that was patient, steady, and impossible to ignore. Lily, too, had felt the change. She had come to Red Rock as an outsider, unsure of how she would be received, yet she had found a community and, in James, a partner she could trust. She admired his quiet strength, the way he treated people with fairness, and the way he had supported her through every challenge. Over time, admiration had grown into something more, a warmth in her chest whenever he was near, a sense of safety and trust she had never felt before. Life in Red Rock continued to present challenges, but Lily and James faced them together. One afternoon, as they were repairing fences on the outskirts of the ranch, a small group of travelers approached the town seeking shelter and guidance. The travelers had heard of the dangers on the plains, of bandits and storms, and they were cautious. Lily stepped forward immediately, offering help and advice. James stood beside her, adding his own guidance. Together, they ensured that the travelers were safe and their animals secured. The townspeople watched, impressed once again by their teamwork and the calm authority that seemed to surround them. It was during moments like these that James realized how much he relied on Lily, not just for her skills or her courage, but for her presence, her perspective, and her unwavering support. She had become his partner in every sense, someone whose judgment he trusted, whose opinions mattered, and whose companionship brought him comfort. He admired her, respected her, and though he had not yet spoken the words aloud, he knew that he loved her. The town of Red Rock had changed as well. The cowboys who had once laughed at Lily now treated her with respect, often seeking her advice or following her example. Even those who had been skeptical began to acknowledge her value and contributions. The story of the Apache girl who arrived as a joke had transformed into the story of a remarkable woman who had earned her place through action, courage, and character. One evening, after a long day of work, James and Lily found themselves walking through the quiet streets of the town. The sun was setting behind the hills, casting long shadows across the dusty roads. The townspeople were settling in for the night, and the air was filled with the calm hum of domestic life. James stopped for a moment, looking at Lily. "You've changed this town?" he said quietly. Lily smiled. "No, we've changed it together," she replied. James nodded, realizing that their partnership had grown stronger than he could have imagined. It was then that James felt certain it was time to take the next step. He had been patient, letting their connection grow naturally, but he knew he could no longer ignore the depth of his feelings. He took Lily's hand gently, feeling the warmth of her skin and the steady strength of her grasp. "Lily," he said softly, "I don't want to imagine my life without you. You've been my partner through everything, and I want you to be by my side forever." Lily looked at him, her eyes wide with emotion. She had hoped for this moment, felt it approaching through the months they had shared, yet hearing the words made her heart swell with happiness.
"James," she whispered, "I feel the same. I have from the very beginning."
There was a pause, a quiet moment of understanding that needed no further words. Their hands tightened together, and in that moment, everything else faded. The town, the past, even the memory of the joke that had brought her there. The following days were filled with preparations. The townspeople who had watched the growing connection between Lily and James were overjoyed at the news of their engagement. There was laughter, celebration, and a sense of community that had grown stronger because of Lily's presence. The story of the Apache girl sent as a joke had now become a story of love, respect, and triumph. When the day came for their wedding, the town gathered in the open field just outside Red Rock. The sun shone brightly, casting a warm light over the fields and the people assembled. James waited nervously, adjusting his coat and checking the small details, but there was no doubt in his mind. When Lily appeared, walking toward him with quiet grace, he felt a surge of emotion he could hardly contain. She wore simple clothing, practical yet beautiful, and her eyes shone with joy and certainty. The ceremony was simple but meaningful, reflecting the lives they had led and the values they held dear. Friends and townspeople offered their blessings, some with tears in their eyes, others with smiles of admiration. When the moment came for Lily to take James's last name, she did so not out of obligation, but as a symbol of their shared journey, their partnership, and their mutual respect. It was a moment that reflected how far they had come, from strangers connected by a joke to partners bound by love and understanding. After the ceremony, they walked hand in hand through the town, greeted by cheers and congratulations. Children waved, cowboys tipped their hats, and the townspeople marveled at how the story of a prank had transformed into a story of love and community. James and Lily laughed together, sharing private smiles that spoke of the months they had spent growing together, facing challenges, and learning to trust and care for one another. Even after the celebrations, life continued in Red Rock as it always had. There were chores to be done, animals to care for, and the endless work of maintaining the town. But now Lily and James faced these tasks together, side by side with a partnership that had been tested and strengthened by months of shared experience. They had learned how to support one another, how to communicate without words, and how to face challenges with courage and patience. In the evenings, they would sit together under the stars, reflecting on the journey that had brought them to this moment. They spoke of hopes for the future, of dreams they wanted to pursue together, and of the simple joys of life in Red Rock. They understood that their love was not just about grand gestures or dramatic moments, but about shared experience, trust, and quiet understanding. The story of Lily and James became part of the town's history, told and retold as an example of courage, respect, and the unexpected ways life can bring people together. What had begun as a joke, sending an Apache girl to a cowboy, had turned into a story of triumph, partnership, and love that endured beyond the initial laughter. Lily had transformed the town through her actions, her character, and her heart, and in the process she had found a love that matched her strength and spirit. As the sun set over Red Rock, casting golden light across the town, James and Lily rode together through the fields, the wind in their hair and the world around them calm and bright. They laughed, shared stories, and enjoyed the simple pleasure of being together. In that moment, nothing else mattered. The challenges they had faced, the doubts of others, and even the prank that had started it all had faded into the past. What remained was love, respect, and a shared life that would continue to grow and flourish. Lily Redfeather and James McAllister had come a long way since their first meeting. They had faced prejudice, challenges, and the unpredictable nature of life in a frontier town. They had grown together, learning to trust, respect, and care for one another. And now, as husband and wife, they looked forward to a future filled with hope, partnership, and the quiet joys of a life well lived. Their story, once born from a joke, had become a story of courage, love, and transformation. The town of Red Rock would always remember how a young Apache woman, arriving as a prank, had changed the lives of everyone around her, not through words or demands, but through action, heart, and a spirit that could not be ignored. And as they rode together into the sunset, it was clear that their journey, while challenging, had led them to a place of true happiness, partnership, and enduring love.